Hey, governmental private followers, and everyone else who enjoys watching these videos. As promised, I put out a post today saying that I'm going to be talking about the CAR methodology. There's a lot of similar methodologies out there, but they all have the same express intent and purpose. How do we tell our story in a very concise and succinct way on paper for recruiters during the hiring process? Not only does this apply to resumes, but it's also a great way to articulate your story with a little bit more detail in a formal interview setting, either on video or in person. Now, this is one of the hardest things that people kind of have to visualize, especially coming out of the government, because even though we're problem solving every single day, we're not writing it down. No one's telling us, hey, you should probably write this stuff down because it's going to be important later on. But every single day, whether we're on patrol, whether we're leading a department, whether we're overseeing an RFP, whether we're overseeing multiple programs, all of us are problem solving every day. And we're all being asked, with rare exception, how can we make this better? How can we make it more efficient? And that's the purpose of the stories that should be included in your resume. The CAR methodology. What's the challenge? What's the action? And what's the result? And this makes it super concise. We all come across problems, issues, challenges in our normal work lives, whether it's volunteer work, paid work, off duty employment, if we're talking about law enforcement. All of this is experience. And so we want to talk about what separates us from everybody else. It's not a job description. It's not regurgitating, something that is super generic. It's talking about, I did this, I recognize that, and here's why it matters. So we're going to go through a lot of examples, about 10 or so, that I have pulled from clients that I have worked with over the past couple of years. And we're going to talk through what they did, and then we're going to break it down by challenge, action, result. Let's go ahead and get started. The first one is former law enforcement guy who went into the financial services industry as a loan officer. He created a metric tracking sheet which was adopted department-wide, saving approximately 11,000 hours annually and increased loan production by 43% monthly, or 9.6 million annually. Okay, so what's the challenge here? Lack of a standardized metric tracking sheet across the department. I'm sure that everyone was doing it their own way, and it was taking a lot of time, and nor was it standardized. And so he created a template, he brought it to his department, and they adopted it department-wide. That means everyone was doing it the same way. All of the metrics were being captured in the same format, and it was saving a ton of time. The result, it saved approximately 11,000 hours every year and increased the loan production by 43% monthly. So let's break that down. Say it took him on average 4 hours a week to compile his metrics, and say there were X number of people in the department and it was taking them 5 or 6 hours a week. Well, just using those guesses, and that's what we're doing, we're guessing here, trying to conservatively guess, we can say, here's how many hours it was taking over the course of a year. And then we compare and contrast that with this standardized metric tracking sheet that has built-in, rows, built-in boxes where you're just going down the list. And obviously, this is all subjective. Everyone's going to complete that at their own pace, but you can approximate and say, now it's broken down where it only takes maybe an hour and a half every week. So the difference of that over the course of a year times however many people, that's the difference that we're talking about here and where we come up with 11,000 hours. Increasing loan production by 43% monthly. Well, it stands to reason that the less paperwork you're doing and the better metrics that you're tracking will allow you to be more proficient and efficient in how you're producing loans. So again, unless you are someone who is super OCD and you're tracking every single little thing, a lot of this is thinking back through what you've done and saying, okay, well, on average, depending on how fast I typed and all these other indicators, it took me X amount of minutes, hours, whatever the case may be. Everyone else was doing this too. So 8 people, it was taking us on average, 4 to 6 hours a week. spread out over the course of a year, and that's the initial number. So you can work backwards from there. I hope that makes sense. Second example, decreased overtime by 75% by reevaluating shift coverage and utilizing part-time employees, saving approximately $60,000 annually. Big problem in contract security, overtime, especially when you don't have the right people who show up, when you're overstretched, when people are wearing multiple hats, big time problem. So the challenge, out of control overtime or consistently going over. Action, reevaluated shift coverages and utilize part-time employees to shore up your gaps. Result, save $60,000 annually, decreased overtime by 75%. So again, same concept here. Let's look at the next one. Created a standardized SOP and digital case management system to track all evidence and legal process, saving 1,100 hours annually and ensuring 100% accountability of chain of custody. Okay, so this was a SAC in federal law enforcement who was responsible for multiple digital forensics labs. But they didn't have a case management system and it wasn't tracking everything. Everything was super manual. I know, you're thinking like, seriously? Federal law enforcement? I know. That was my response too. Anyways, the challenge is lack of standardization for case management and chain of custody. Action, he created it. Obviously, there's a lot more that goes into it, but what people are really, interested in is how you did it. And ultimately, that's something that can be talked about in an interview setting. You don't have to go through all of it on paper. Result, saved 1,100 hours annually. Now chain of custody is at 100%, which we all know is huge when it comes time for audits, court, and a myriad of other things. Next, assisted in overhauling the multi-week criminal investigator training program for the agency, reducing the length by 43% from 3.5 to 2 weeks, and standardizing the training curriculum against best practices, saving $5,000 per student and enabling each student to capture the information more efficiently. Now, they had a problem with this course is too long. People are struggling with capturing the information. How can we address it? So they overhauled it. They reduced it from 3.5 to 2 weeks. As a result, they saved $5,000 per student, saved 60 hours of instruction per class, and made it more easier for the students to say, I understand this now. Let's move on to the next one. Again, we are faced with problems every single day in our career. And I'll tell you this, even if it's not implemented, even if you had an idea and you just recommended it to your bosses, that's still worth putting on paper, even though it wasn't implemented, because it demonstrates that continuous improvement approach. Let's keep going. Inherited a major business unit with zero accountability for productivity and lack of adherence to PMI standards. Evaluated all 110 projects and programs while ensuring employees' skill set and hired 9 additional personnel to reallocate the work. Within 3 months, 95% of the organization accepted the changes and all projects were back on schedule, saving approximately 88,000 hours. Obviously, if you didn't get the PMI reference, we're talking about formal project management here. This is 3 sentences that fit just fine on a resume and allow the reader to understand what the problem was, what action was taken, and ultimately why we should care. So the challenge, a business unit with zero accountability for productivity or adherence to PMI standards. The action, did a complete evaluation of all the projects and hired 9 additional personnel to make up for the reallocation of the work. Finally, all projects were back on schedule and they saved 88,000 hours in 3 months. Pretty awesome. Okay. Next, spearheaded the creation of a nationwide electronic security system maintenance plan by utilizing security integrators and prioritized locations by risk, ridership, and revenue. Developed 6 SOPs and decreased the time required to close a repair ticket by 83%, saving approximately 5,500 hours annually. Obviously, this guy works at a bus or at a train company, but he recognized that the non-standardized security system maintenance plan was causing a massive issue. And so he created a standardized system. I believe, if I remember correctly, he utilized like a SharePoint system or something like that to standardize it. He also you started utilizing security integrators to make up some of the work. The result, he decreased the time required to close a repair ticket by 83% and saved 5,500 hours annually. And that's probably a pretty super conservative estimate. Because remember, so many people start focusing on cost savings, but at the end of the day, time is directly equitable to cost. Finally, this was a captain at a state law enforcement agency. Directed a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative for recruiting and created a 85-page document outlining the hiring process and all training offered, ensuring a standardized playbook for each process from start to finish. This resulted in an average 150% increase in applications. I think we all know how important diversity, equity, and inclusion can be to a hiring process. And he identified the lack of it in the hiring process. The action was he created this document, he standardized the playbook, and they saw a significant increase in applications moving forward. Again, I don't care whether you're in law enforcement, the military, the intelligence community, you're working for TikTok, Meta, Amazon, a mom and pop shop in the middle of nowhere. We have the opportunity to identify potential issues and areas of efficiency every single day. Every single day. And it's up to you whether you choose to put that forward and save time, save money, increase morale, any of the potential outcomes, or you choose to just do your work and not think outside the box or not volunteer anything. At the end of the day, one of the number one things I hear from people is, well, I was just a patrol officer, or I didn't do all of this stuff. I guarantee you that if we look, there are opportunities here where we can talk about your story and what you accomplished. And again, even if you didn't accomplish anything, even if you recommended something, I don't care that it was shot down, that no one ever did anything with it. Even a recommendation can be put on paper in a resume. So just remember that this is one of the best ways to talk about what separates you from everyone else. How does your brain think? How do you approach areas of efficiency, problem solving, critical thinking? And this is one of my favorite things to do with each client is talk through each example or each career example of what did you do and why does it matter? Because it may not matter to you in law enforcement. It may not matter to you in the military. It may just be like, oh, this is another thing I have to do. But in the private sector, unless we're talking about a nonprofit or something like that, and even nonprofits, we all want to operate at peak efficiency. We all want to utilize our resources to the best of our ability and our people to the best of our ability. And so efficiency and process improvement are all extremely important no matter what company you work at or what company you're hoping to work at. I'll get off my soapbox for now, but I hope this gave you a lot of really good examples. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. Otherwise, have a great night and be safe.